Good morning. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad to have you all here for this webinar with FABSCRAP, a longtime partner of Pratt and the Pratt Fashion Department. Before we get started today, I am just going to give a quick introduction to why we've organized this event and let you know about some other great events that are also going on this week and today. So this is our Fall 2020 Earth Action Week, which is centered around the themes of race, health, and climate. I am Tessa Mafucci. I'm one of the coordinators of this event. I am the sustainability coordinator in the fashion department, and I've been working together with the Sustainability Coalition across Pratt Institute to plan a whole week of events that started on the 21st and runs through this Saturday, the 26th. All of the events will be recorded. This one's being recorded right now, and they will be made available on the Pratt Sustainability Center's website after the fact. And you can find out more about this event, about other events that are happening on the Sustainability Center's website, which is just sustainabilitycenter.pratt.edu. I definitely encourage you to go check that out. There are wonderful things happening in the coming days, including a virtual sew-a-thon later today and also a panel about equity and justice in the sustainable fashion movement that will be taking place this evening. And also a virtual exhibit of Pratt student work centering on these themes of race, health, and climate. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Rachael Stein, the community coordinator of FABSCRAP, who will be leading our event today. Thanks, Rachael.
Great. Thank you so much, Tessa. Hi, everybody. My name is Rachael Stein. As Tessa said, I am the community coordinator at FABSCRAP. We are a New York City-based nonprofit that works with the fashion and design industries to make them more sustainable by keeping textile waste out of landfill. So today I'm going to be talking about textile waste. I'm going to share my screen so you can see my presentation. Give me one moment. Okay, and then just a little bit of housekeeping before I jump into everything. I will have time for Q&A after the presentation. So if you have questions as we are going along, you can feel free to put them in the chat. I may not see them and answer them live. If I do, I will respond to them. If I don't, we'll definitely have time after the presentation for any and all burning questions that you have. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. All right. Okay, so it's no secret that the fashion and design industries have a big problem when it comes to waste. From designer labels to fast fashion brands, the fashion industry contributes a significant amount of the world's garbage. So what happens to all of this waste? Some of it goes into landfill, which basically means that the trash is buried. I think a lot of us have heard the term landfill, but we probably don't think about it that much. Basically, landfill means that trash is buried in a hole in the ground, the bottom is lined, and the top is covered to protect the surrounding environment. But over time, these barriers can break down. If water gets into landfill due to maybe there's an opening in the top, that water mixes with the waste chemicals that are in landfill and creates something called leachate. If leachate gets into the surrounding environment, it can contaminate groundwater and it can contaminate the water that we drink. Landfills also naturally produce methane gas, which is flammable and explosive, so it creates hazardous working conditions. And methane is also a greenhouse gas, so it contributes to climate change. Other waste generated by the fashion industry is incinerated or burned. And burning waste with fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas causes air pollution, which obviously has a negative impact on our health. Burning waste also produces greenhouse gases, so again, contributing to climate change. So a lot of this can seem maybe a little far removed from us as individuals, but the fact is that all of this landfilling and all of this incineration, it affects the whole planet and it affects all of us individually. The greenhouse effect that is caused by greenhouse gases, as many of us know, means rising temperatures, glaciers melting, rising sea levels, altered weather patterns, and ecosystem loss. And all of this impacts the Earth's resources, which we all use. So now that we are all a little frightened by all of this waste that we are dealing with, let's start to think about what we can do about it. To figure that out, we first need to understand the type of waste that we are dealing with, which here is textile waste. When I say the phrase textile waste, for a lot of people, what comes to mind is used clothes, old towels and bed sheets, and the like. This is what is known as residential or post-consumer waste. In New York City, specifically, we as residents throw out 200,000 tons of clothing and textiles every year, and it makes up 6% of our total waste stream. Now, 200,000 tons is a pretty big number. So for some context, this is the Brooklyn Bridge here. 200,000 tons is 14 times the weight of the Brooklyn Bridge. I don't know how many folks here today have seen the Brooklyn Bridge in a while. If you haven't, no worries, it's still there. It's a massive, massive construction. It's made of granite, limestone, and steel, and we would need 14 of this enormous bridge just to equate the amount of clothes that New Yorkers are throwing out every year. Another way to look at this is that the Brooklyn Bridge can support about 90,000 tons of weight. So we would need more than 2 Brooklyn Bridges just to hold the amount of clothes that New Yorkers are throwing out in just 1 year. So again, those numbers, the 200,000 tons, that's just New York City. Across the country, Americans throw out 12.6 million tons of clothing and textiles every year. So we come back to the question of why should we care? How does this affect us as individuals? We already know that there's an environmental cost to all of this waste, but there is also a financial one. In New York City specifically, the city spends $60 million every year to send textiles to landfill. And that's money that the city is not spending on other programs that might be more beneficial to all of us. So it's a lot of residential waste, we know that now. It's a really big problem, but it's actually only part of the problem because there's 2 different streams of textile waste. So I was just talking about residential or post-consumer waste. That is, again, the used clothes and home goods that are donated or discarded by a family or individual. There's also commercial or pre-consumer waste, and this is donated or discarded by a company, and it looks very different. Commercial textile waste includes fabric that is unused or left over from the making of clothing and home goods. So what does that look like? It can include headers, which are what a designer uses to shop for fabrics when they're beginning their design process. So physically they look a little bit like this. They're swatches of fabric that are attached to a piece of paper or cardboard. And because these are shopping tools, fabric mills that are making the fabric, they will send hundreds of thousands of these to designers so that the designer will hopefully select that mill's fabric. But once a designer has picked out their fabrics, they don't need their shopping tools anymore. So all of these hundreds of thousands of headers, they become waste. Once a designer has picked out the fabric that they want to use, the fabric mill will typically send them a cutting of that fabric. This will be a bigger piece of fabric, usually 1 to 3 yards. Designers will use this cutting of fabric to make sure that what they've selected is in fact suitable for their needs. So is the texture and weight of the fabric correct? Is the color right? If there's a pattern in the fabric, is it repeating correctly, or are there any errors? But once a designer has examined this cutting of fabric, it also becomes waste. There's cutting room waste, which are the cookie cutter edges that are left over after you've cut out the fabric that you need for your garments. And there's overstock rolls of fabric, because a lot of times a fabric mill has a minimum order amount that is greater than what a brand actually needs. So say I'm a brand, I have found this orange plaid fabric that I love and I want to use it for my collection. I need 5,000 yards of it, but the fabric mill that's made this orange plaid is telling me that if I want the fabric at all, I need to order 10,000 yards, which is more than I need. So what do? I order the 10,000 yards. I only use the 5,000, and now there's 5,000 extra yards of this orange plaid that I do not need or want. So that also becomes fabric waste. Last but not least, there are mutilated garments like this t-shirt. So brands will mutilate garments for a few reasons. The first is for sampling. So if a designer likes fabric that's being used in a competitor's garment, they may go out and purchase that competitor's garment, cut out a swatch of the fabric, and send it to their own fabric team to source a similar fabric. The other reason is that a lot of garment production happens overseas. So when production samples are sent back to the US for approvals, sometimes they are slashed for cheaper import taxes, because the shirt that we're seeing on the screen right now that has this very aggressive slash down the back and it's got a little swatch fabric also cut out, it's not exactly wearable in its current condition. So there's clearly a lot of different types of commercial textile waste. But unfortunately, there is not a lot of data available on commercial waste in general. So it's hard for us to really know exactly how much we're dealing with. In New York City, in New York State, across the country, and globally. But it is estimated that for every pound of waste that we throw away as individuals, the business generated 40 pounds of waste upstream. So for New York City's 200,000 tons of residential textile waste, those could be associated with 8 million tons of commercial waste. And again, because there's so little data available on commercial waste, this is just an estimate. But I do think that it's helpful for us to understand the scope of the problem and that it is massive. For some context, this is the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. The Great Pyramid of Giza weighs about 6.5 million tons. So that 8 million tons of commercial waste in New York City that I was talking about is more than the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, which I think is pretty wild. So why should brands care about all of the textile waste that they are producing? Because it's really in their best interest to do something about it. Sustainability is something that customers and individuals like us care about. So more sustainable brands and more corporate social responsibility can translate to more sales. There's the environmental consideration, of course, because each pound of waste from apparel production is associated with more than double that in greenhouse gas emissions. So producing less waste over change. And in New York City specifically, it's actually the law. So if more than 10% of a business's waste is textiles, they are required to recycle it. Interestingly, few brands know about this law, and even less, if any, have ever been fined for violating it. So while it is officially on the books, ultimately it's not very effective. Before FABSCRAP, for brands that did want to recycle their textile waste, unfortunately, there was not much infrastructure to support that. The waste that fashion brands are producing just wasn't suited for existing nonprofits. If we think of organizations like Housing Works, Goodwill, and Salvation Army, they resell wearable clothing in terms of the textiles that they're dealing with. They resell wearable clothing, not so much a shirt that has a hole in it or several yards of silk. They're also sorting exclusively for reuse. So if they receive a shirt as a donation, they'll check the neck, the pits, and the bottom of the shirt to see if there's any stains or any tears, to see if it's saleable. Sorting for fiber content is what needs to be done to recycle fabric, and that's just not something that these other organizations were doing. Another challenge is the amount of waste that an individual brand might produce. So say, my brand has 40 boxes of headers that I want to recycle. 40 boxes of headers is too much for an arts organization to handle. With little pieces of fabric, you can certainly make art projects with those, but ultimately there's only so much art that can be made with these little pieces of fabric, especially considering the headers will need to be deconstructed in order for the fabric to be used. On the other hand, these 40 boxes of headers that I have is too little for industrial recycling, which needs tens of thousands of pounds in order to shred and recycle at scale. All of this takes time that a brand may not be able to dedicate and transportation that they may not be equipped to handle on their own. And none of it addresses brand equity and proprietary concerns. So say a brand has fabric that has their logo on it, or maybe a brand has a proprietary pattern that is very tied to their brand identity. If we think, for example, of Burberry plaid, it's a very iconic pattern. We see that plaid, we know that it's Burberry. For whatever reason, there are many different reasons why a brand may say, I don't want others to be able to access my materials. And so that's something that also needs to be taken into account. So thinking of all these very unique challenges with commercial textile waste, that's where the idea for FABSCRAP was born. So this model has been refined a bit over time, but what it comes down to is this. By working with a lot of different brands, we quickly meet industrial recycling minimums. By providing the transportation, storage, and sorting of fabric waste, we make it very easy for brands to recycle their unwanted material. And by developing our own sorting process, we can make sure that we are sorting for the highest possible end use. So allowing fabric that is not being used by a brand to have a longer life and be upcycled into something new. We can also make sure that for those smaller pieces of fabric, we are sorting them in a way that facilitates industrial shredding. And we can make sure that any proprietary material we receive is only recycled, not reused, in order to protect brand equity. So I want to break this model down for you all in a little more detail, starting with our recycling service arm. So FABSCRAP provides our clients with laundry bags that they can fill with their textile waste. Once their bags are full, they can request a pickup from us. We work with a delivery service partner to bring these bags to our warehouse in the Brooklyn Army Terminal for processing. So you can see in this picture that we use two different colored bags. The black bag on the left is for any proprietary materials that will only be shredded. And then the brown or golden looking bags on the right are for everything else. So this material will be made available for reuse, or it will be recycled. For every bag of fabric that we pick up from a brand, that brand pays a service fee. So this is similar to how any business will be paying for paper recycling, plastic recycling, and also commercial hauling for their trash. And this is something that I really like to emphasize because I think that for a lot of us as individuals, we don't think about when we throw our trash out, we don't think a lot about the cost of throwing that out. I live in an apartment building. My building my building's trash gets picked up by the city. That's not the case for businesses. Businesses have to pay a commercial hauler to take their trash away. So whether a brand is choosing to recycle their fabric with FABSCRAP or they are opting to throw it out, they're actually paying for it either way. We really want brands to be taking financial responsibility for the waste that they are producing. The fee that we have for our black bags is a little bit higher than our fee for our brown bags because we want to incentivize reuse. Reusing material has a greater environmental benefit than recycling it. It's going to keep that material out of landfill for a longer period of time. So we really want brands to be absolutely sure that what they're saying is proprietary cannot in fact be reused. FABSCRAP was closed for a few months due to COVID, but we resumed most of our operations mid-July. So we are back to picking up textile waste from our partner brands. Right now we are picking up 5 days a week, every other week. For every day that we pick up, we can sometimes get 40 to 50 bags per day, and we'll average over 5,000 pounds of fabric waste every week. Right now, we are working with more than 450 different brands. You may recognize some of the names on the screen. A lot of the brands that we work with are in fashion, but we also work with interior design. We work with costume departments. We work with universities, including Pratt. So there's a lot more industries and companies that are producing textile waste than you might think. So that brings me to the next step in our process, which is sorting the fabric. Going through bags of fabric for fiber content and reuse potential is very time intensive. And so we aren't able to go through every bag as they come in. So that's why we have what I fondly call the pile or the mountain. It is what it sounds like it looks like. This is how we store the bags of fabric waste until we are ready to sort them, which we do with a lot of volunteer help. Since FABSCRAP opened in 2016, we have had more than 6,000 volunteers join us at our warehouses, including a lot of volunteer groups. This has included corporate groups and college classes. Right now, we have volunteer sessions Monday through Friday in the morning only. And at the end of each 3-hour sorting session, our volunteers can take 5 pounds of fabric for free, and anything else that they might want to get after that, they get a volunteer discount. The reason for this is we really want our material to be as affordable and accessible to folks as possible. So we distribute quite a lot of it for free. So what do our volunteers help us with? Each of our volunteers is set up at a sorting table that looks like this. So as you can see, there are several bags placed around the table. At the top of the table, we have our 100% bags. So right now we are sorting for 100% cotton, 100% wool, and 100% polyester. We also have our volunteers sort out anything with spandex content into its own bag, and then all other fiber content goes into our mixed bag. We have 2 other bags at our table for non-fiber and non-fabric material. One of them is paper recycling, pretty self-explanatory. I mentioned all those headers earlier, and you can see them in this photo as well. Because we receive so many headers, the amount of paper recycling that we do is quite substantial. And then the last bag is for trash. So of course at FABSCRAP we aim to keep as much out of landfill as possible, but unfortunately there is still some material that we are not able to recycle or reuse. So this includes staples that have been removed from headers, stickers or tape that is on fabric. Every once in a while we'll find some items in our bags that don't belong. So sometimes we found hangers, we found a hole puncher, that sort of thing. So if we're not able to find a way to donate those materials or reuse them, unfortunately they do become waste. And then last but not least, you can't quite see it in this photo, but underneath our tables, we have what we call our reuse bin. So this is for any material that is reusable and we will eventually make available for folks to shop. So this includes large pieces of fabric, at least a yard in length, as well as specialty fabrics, leather, lace, fur, and sequins. So to determine into which bag a piece of fabric should go, our volunteers need to read the information on each header, which typically includes fiber content. They must then completely separate the fabric from everything else so that the fabric is ready to be recycled. Once we've amassed a large enough quantity of fabric and scraps, this is typically going to be 10 to 15,000 pounds. Then it is time to recycle. So we at FABSCRAP don't do the recycling ourselves. We work with an industrial facility in New Jersey, and they will take our fabric scraps and grind them down into this fluffy gray material called shoddy. Shoddy is incredibly versatile and has a lot of different uses. You can see it's fluffy, so it's a fiber fill. You can use it to stuff pillows, mattresses, stuffed animals. It's also compressed and it's used as carpet padding. It's used in moving blankets, and it's also used as insulation, most commonly in car doors and in new buildings, but also in meal delivery kits. So a lot of great uses for shoddy. Unfortunately, not all fabric can be shredded. Leather and spandex scraps specifically can't go through the shredder. Leather is too tough to be shredded, and the spandex melts at the high temperatures of the shredding machine. If you think of maybe some swimsuit elastic that's kind of given up after a while of being out in the sun, that's kind of the gist of what's happening. So unfortunately, we can't recycle these as shoddy. But we still want to keep all of the leather and spandex at a landfill, so we make them available for folks to shop. So that brings me to FABSCRAP's third arm, which is the shopping. Okay, we receive a lot of reusable fabric here at FABSCRAP, and this includes rolls of yardage. We also receive leather skins, trims, yarn cones, zippers, buttons, and a lot more. We have all of those spandex and leather scraps that we want to keep at a landfill. So all of this we make available for the public to shop at thrift store prices. Because all of that sorting that I mentioned happens at our Brooklyn warehouse, that is where new material goes out first. The warehouse is a true thrifting experience. Our shoppers never really know what gems they're going to find here, and we price everything by the pounds. At the warehouse, we also have a special section for mutilated garments, like that t-shirt that we saw earlier. So even though that t-shirt with that slash down the back and the hole cut out of it, it's not exactly wearable in that condition, but so many folks who shop with us and volunteer with us are very talented and creative. So what has these imperfections and mutilations can be mended and made wearable again. So we like to make those available for people to browse. Just over a year ago, we opened a retail location in Chelsea in Manhattan. This offers a more curated selection of fabrics that are priced by the yard. This shopping experience is more similar to a traditional fabric store in terms of the organization and ease of shopping. And even though the fabric here is priced by the yard, the prices range from $5 a yard to $15 a yard typically. So it's still much more affordable and accessible than many other fabric stores. At our Manhattan shop, we also have special sections highlighting our featured artists and designers. So this program is a little bit on pause right now just due to COVID. We hope to resume it next year. But this allows us to partner with creatives in our community, offer them some retail space, and it also allows us to have finished products to share with our customers in addition to the raw materials that we always have. We also sell a lot of fabric and material through our online store. So this makes our stock of reclaimed materials, including yardage, scraps, trim, leather, yarn cones, and more, accessible to folks beyond the New York City area. There's a lot of great material here, as I believe some in the Pratt community have already discovered. And I also, I actually have a promo code to share with you all for the online store. So I will, if anybody's looking for some material to be creative with, we can help you out with that. All right, and then last but not least, FABSCRAP does, when it's not the middle of a pandemic, FABSCRAP does hold a lot of pop-ups where we will set up a temporary store at a school like Pratt or a community center for folks to shop a selection of our fabrics. This has really been a great way for us to connect with and expand our community. We've done pop-ups, a lot of pop-ups around New York City and in other cities as well, including Cincinnati and Philadelphia. And through all of the shopping options that we have available, we really aim to be an affordable and accessible resource. We distribute quite a lot of material for free, especially to our volunteer community. This is really important to us. I think that for a lot of us as individuals and consumers, we're used to a lot of items being cheap to purchase. They may not be especially well made. They may not be sustainably or ethically made. So when a product is sustainably made, ethically made, and it can often come with a high price tag, which can be cost prohibitive. So for us at FABSCRAP, distributing a lot of fabric for free and keeping our prices low means empowering a bigger community of creatives to create more and to create with sustainable materials. We have a really amazing community that shops with us, including students, home sewers, quilters, artists. There are also some designers who will source their fabric from us, and then they can in turn use our recycling service for their own fabric waste, promoting a more circular economy. So I've just talked a lot about textile waste. I've talked a lot to you about the FABSCRAP model and how we work with brands to make the fashion and design industries more sustainable. How much of an impact are we making? So at FABSCRAP, we obsessively collect data through every aspect of our operations, tracking points like how much waste comes in through our recycling service, how much gets recycled or reused, what and how much our volunteers are sorting, and much more. We then compile all of this information into a report that we put out every year. This is a public resource that shows how FABSCRAP has grown quantitatively and qualitatively over the years. And then also, I know I said before that there just isn't a lot of data on commercial waste available. So the data that we're sharing is about commercial waste. So in many ways, it's very unprecedented. So that's why it's really important for us to have this be a public resource. So I have some 2019 data that I want to share with you. This here on this screen is aggregate data. So this is data for FABSCRAP in general. So you can see here that in 2019, FABSCRAP picked up more than 250,000 tons. Sorry, pounds, not tons. I'm getting ahead of myself. More than 250,000 pounds of material. And that is more than 250,000 pounds that we kept at a landfill. When you keep material at a landfill, that is preventing carbon emissions. So with all the material that we picked up in 2019, we prevented more than 1,500 tons of CO2 emissions, which is pretty amazing. And then since between 2016, when FABSCRAP started, and 2019, we diverted almost 500,000 pounds of material from landfill, saving more than 3,000 tons of carbon emissions. And I can also tell you that, you know, we're almost at the end of 2020 now. The amount of weight that we have picked up has surpassed 500,000 pounds. I want to say it's over 550,000 pounds now, which is pretty amazing. And then you can also see on the right side of this what happens with all the material that we picked up. So from what we collected, 39% of this material we were able to reuse and redistribute, which is amazing. So this is fabric that folks were able to shop and upcycle into new projects. 51% of the material we picked up was recycled. So that includes both fabric recycling, where the fabric was shredded and turned into shoddy, as well as paper recycling. And then you will see that there is a small percentage of fabric that we were not able to recycle or reuse. So 10% of the material that we received unfortunately did have to go to landfill, but I want to point out that of this 10%, the majority of this was non-fabric material. So I'd mentioned before, you know, staples, tape, stickers, that sort of thing, maybe like broken hangers. All of that is non-fabric material, and that's the type of the material that did have to go to landfill. So we're still keeping as much of the fabric out of landfill as possible. I also, and I apologize for the graininess of this on my screen, I also wanted to share some Pratt specific data. So in 2019, Pratt diverted more than 3,000 pounds of material from landfill. So I just want to say pat on the back to all of you. And since FABSCRAP and Pratt started working together in 2017, Pratt has diverted more than 10,000 pounds of material from landfill. That is amazing. Pratt's total impact in terms of carbon emissions saved is over 75 tons of carbon emissions prevented, and that's great. And you all are also doing very well in terms of keeping, material out of landfill. 32% of the fabric that the fabric waste that FABSCRAP picked up from Pratt was able to be reused. 66% of the material was recycled, and a near 2% of it went to landfill. So I just want to say kudos all around to the Pratt community for walking the walk and really committing to the work. I think that's really important. It's really important for all of us, I think. So this is an individualized report for Pratt. We put together a report like this for all of the brands that we work with. And this has become a really important tool for the brands, universities, and whoever else that we work with, so that you can all see the impact of what you're doing, how much textile waste you're generating, and where it's going. Corporate brands can use this data in their CSR metrics to show their real environmental impact year after year. So great job, Pratt. Very pleased. So that actually brings me to the end of my presentation. Very quickly before we move on to the Q&A, I know that I'd mentioned a promo code for our online store. So that's on the screen right now. It's EDU10. That will get 10% off at FABSCRAP's online store. I hope that you will all stay in touch with us. Our website is FABSCRAP.org. You can sign up for our newsletter for all of our latest and greatest updates. We're also very active on Instagram, including we do a lot of Instagram flash sales. So a lot of fun fabric is always there. So give us a follow at fab_scrap if you'd like. And then I hope that you definitely feel free to stay in touch with me as well directly. My email is up on the screen, but I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see all of your faces a little bit better. And I see that there's some stuff in the chat. Okay. Stacey had asked about the promo code. Yes, so I will put that in the chat as well. It's good for 10% off at FABSCRAP's online store. Okay. Oh, I'm so glad that folks learned a lot. If anybody has any questions now, I would say please feel free to post it in the chat, or I think this group is probably a little large for us to unmute and ask questions. But anyone who does have questions, if you want to put it on the chat, I'll read it out to the group. And we can go from there. Stacey is wondering where the recording will be linked. I think I'll let the Pratt team handle that one.
I have a question for you in the meantime, Rachel.
Yeah.
What's going on with volunteer sessions? Are people able to come in person?
Yes, so that's a great question, Tessa, thank you. So volunteering has resumed at our Brooklyn warehouse. So we are in the Brooklyn Army Terminal, which is in Sunset. It's the border of Sunset Park and Bay Ridge. we are doing in-person volunteer sessions with a lot of safety precautions. So our sessions are much more limited in terms of the amount of folks that we can accommodate. There's one volunteer per table, and all of our stations are spaced 6 feet apart. Everyone's required to wear a mask. I'm not wearing one right now because I'm like in a secluded area, and I wanted you to hear me as best as you could on the screen. But outside of the presentations that I give, I'm always in a mask and wearing gloves while we're out there with our volunteers. So yeah, sorting, we're still receiving waste, so we still need to sort the waste. So yeah, volunteering has resumed. Okay, I see a few questions in the chat. So Sharon wants to know that if we have excess fabric to donate, is that possible? So thank you for asking that, Sharon. FABSCRAP definitely accepts individual drop-offs of materials. So we only accept basically your excess sewing scraps or excess like unused fabric. So no post-consumer material. We can't work with any post-consumer material here. So any used clothes or towels kind of thing is not right for us. For folks who are interested in dropping off material with FABSCRAP, we can accept drop-offs up to 10 pounds at our Manhattan shop or any weight at our Brooklyn warehouse. We do charge $1.50 per pound recycling service fee. As I mentioned before that brands pay a fee, individuals, there is also a small fee for that as well. And that really just helps us cover the cost of processing and shredding the fabric. If you do have a lot of yardage, we will often waive the recycling service fee for that. For anyone who's interested in dropping off fabric to be recycled, you can reach us at service@fabscrap.org, and I'll put that email in the chat. And we can get that scheduled for you. So that was a great question. All right, Brianna wants to know, do you have recommendations for people dealing with their residential waste? Is there a way to recycle scraps of fabric from personal projects or clothes that can't be reworn or repaired? So I think Brianna, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. I'm just gonna say it both ways that I know of. Any personal sewing scraps are appropriate for FABSCRAP. So any of those, definitely we accept personal sewing scraps, any fibers can be brought to us. And then in terms of clothes that cannot be reworn or repaired, I know that there's some, or I've been in the past familiar with some like community programs that will accept clothing to be recycled. So I would try to do a little bit of research, see if there's any like community groups in your area who might know about programs like that. I think that's probably the best place to start. I would also say that for a lot of material, is there a way that you can repurpose it? So if you have a piece of clothing that's maybe just has like a hole that really cannot be repaired in a way that makes sense, can you repurpose that fabric to be used as something else? Can it be used to, can you cut out pieces of that fabric to patch something else? That sort of thing. So I would say trying to be creative about how you can reuse when you don't know what recycling options are available to you is probably your best bet. Okay. We have a question about what days that we have volunteer sessions. So currently we have volunteer sessions Monday through Friday. They are in the morning, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We will be resuming some Saturdays starting in October. This will all of the dates that are available will be up on our website and Eventbrite very soon. It's a little confusing because it's going to be every other Saturday starting October 3rd. We will have multiple Saturday, we will have sessions in the morning and in the afternoon most Saturdays. So I would say just stay in touch with us for the latest updates on days. Okay, so a question from Jennifer. If a company wants to join, or I guess use our FABSCRAP's recycling service, is there a minimum amount that has to be sent and the company pays for the pickup, correct? Okay, so Jennifer, we work with brands of all sizes. So we definitely work with some brands who we pick up from more regularly, and we pick up a larger quantity from them each time. And then we work with some brands that we pick up maybe like 1 to 2 bags a year. So there is no minimum in terms of the amounts of fabric or waste that a brand has to have to work with FABSCRAP. We charge a fee for every bag that we pick up. And that includes the cost of pickup. But Jennifer, if you work with a brand or know a brand that is interested in using our recycling service, I would recommend, I think that there's a form on our website to request service, or they can email us service@fabscrap.org for more information on that, and our service coordinator can help them out. Okay, Amy has a question. She wants to know if there are FABSCRAP-like organizations in other parts of the world, or what brands outside of New York City do about their textile waste. Amy, that's a really great question, and a question we get a lot. And unfortunately, there is not a great answer for that. FABSCRAP sits at a really unique intersection. So there's definitely other organizations that are working, doing similar work, I would say, adjacent to us. So part of FABSCRAP's operations is redistributing material. There are definitely a lot of other organizations that redistribute dead stock fabric, usually in much larger quantities than FABSCRAP sees. So when I was giving that example earlier of my fake brands with my orange plaid fabric, and I have now these 5,000 excess yards of fabric. That's an example of dead stock fabric that can be redistributed, and usually often does through other organizations. And then there's other organizations and companies that recycle textiles, but they recycle textiles exclusively. I have to say, I'm not an expert in either of those ends. I am more of an expert in where FABSCRAP sits in the middle. So as far as we know, we're the only organization that's doing both in this particular way. We're definitely looking forward to the future of being able to expand our services, because definitely there is a need for that beyond the New York City area. So unfortunately not a great answer, but I will say that pre-pandemic, our directors were out in LA, looking at spaces there and meeting with some potential new partners. Actually, that's a question from Anthony, I see, if we've considered expanding to other cities like LA. So yes, we are considering expanding to LA. The timing on that, I think timing on everything right now is up in the air, but hopefully LA will be next. Okay, let's see. McKinsa is also asking if you live outside of New York City, if there's a way to send FABSCRAP our materials, our scraps. I don't know if you mean specifically for individual drop-offs. Unfortunately, right now we can only accept individual drop-offs in person. So if you're outside the New York City area, unfortunately, that's not something that we'd be able to work with you on at this time. But as always, stay in touch with us for updates on how and in what ways we will be able to expand our service. Regina wants to know if there is an interest if there's any interest in or model for partnering with community groups in New York City that may want to develop things like quilts for those in need. That's a great question, Regina. So FABSCRAP definitely partners with a lot of different nonprofits and other charitable groups, community groups, causes, etc., to donate fabric. So I would say that that depends on what the needs of the other organization are. But I would say in the last few months, we've donated quite a bit of fabric to organizations that are making and distributing face masks in their communities for free. So right now, I would say it's in terms of us making connections with those other organizations. Fortunately, right now, a lot of them will find out about us and reach out to see if we're able to make a donation, and happily, typically we are. So great. Okay. Camille is asking what the hours for the Chelsea location are, and do we need a reservation to shop? How far in advance should we reserve shopping or volunteering at the warehouse? Okay, so for our shop in Chelsea, I think currently our shopping appointments are Monday through Friday. I want to say 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., but please double check our website for the most up-to-date info. As I mentioned before, we're trying to expand what we're able to do, and then of course as safely as possible. So any updates to hours and policies will always be on our website and on our Instagram and in our newsletter. We are doing shopping at both locations by appointment only. So yes, you will need to make you will need to make an appointment to shop with us. Let me put in the chat a link for where you can find that. It's just fabscrap.org/shop for shopping appointments at either location. And then how far in advance should you reserve a shopping appointment or a volunteer session? I would say that's up to you. That's personal preference, I think. I would add that we only put up dates and appointments for volunteering and for shopping up until a certain point. So I think right now for the Manhattan shop, shopping appointments are up through October. For the warehouse, we're still getting our October dates up for shopping and for volunteering. And then I will also add that if you're interested in volunteering, you do not need to make an additional shopping appointment because you'll be able to shop when you volunteer. The only exception is if you feel like you really need the full hour to go wild and buy all the fabric, it probably might be better for you to make a shopping appointment because with our volunteer sessions, our volunteers have a little bit of a shorter period of time because we don't want to have all of our volunteers crowding in the shopping area at once. So we want everybody to have time to take a look through everything. Okay, let's see. Miguela, do you have a rough estimate of how much a bag costs per kilo? How do you collaborate with FABSCRAP internationally? So right now, I'm gonna answer that in reverse. Right now, FABSCRAP is not accepting any international shipments. And I will also actually add that through our online store, we don't ship internationally. And the main reason for that is because with all the work that we're doing to help the environment, to prevent carbon emissions, to keep material out of landfill, we want to make sure that we're keeping our environmental footprint as small as possible. So shipping internationally is that's something that would expand our footprints in terms of the negative stuff that we're putting out into the world. So right now we aren't working internationally. Right now, we definitely get questions all the time of, when are you coming to London? When are you coming to these other cities? So I would just say, again, we're definitely hoping to expand in the future. I hope to be able to maybe partner with other organizations internationally. And then in terms of how much a bag costs per kilo, I don't know that I have a rough estimate. We don't, for the service side, for the bags that we pick up, we don't charge per weight, we charge per bag. So some of the bags end up being heavier than others. So probably not a great answer. If you have any other questions specifically on that, feel free to add them to the chat. Okay. All right, are there any other questions?
Just add one final note. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Rachel, for lending your time and expertise and sharing all of the FABSCRAP information and insights. And I'll also add, I just put in the chat the link to the Pratt Sustainable Fashion Club, which is a student-led group, and they're working on some collaborations with FABSCRAP in the coming months. Hopefully a small safe distanced visit and some volunteer sessions and things like that. So follow them on Instagram if you're part of the Pratt community and want to get in on those things.
Awesome. Well,
So,
thank you all so much for having me. Yeah.
thank you, Rachel. Thank you again. We really appreciate it. And this will be shared on the Sustainability Center's website. So we'll be able to rewatch if you missed part of it or want to share with anyone. So thank you again so much. We hope to see you all at more events throughout the rest of the days of Earth Action Week here at Pratt. And enjoy the rest of your days. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.